someone to save. I wanna tell you something new. Roller goes into a wall. I drive away into the night and I contemplate for a while.
I've been an Adobe user for about 7-ish years now, and I've learnt so much from using their software, and I simply would not be where I am today if it wasn't for them as a company. Their software has allowed me to bring my visions to life and develop as an artist. However, I regret to say that I no longer wish to continue my relationship with Premiere Pro, After Effects and Audition. Oh, and by the way, Adobe, you know that much bigger software that I told you not to worry about? Well, so why leave my beloved Adobe behind? It's expensive. When I was a poor student, it wasn't a bad £25 a month or so for the whole library of software that you were getting. But now I'm paying big boy prices, it's getting harder and harder to justify the monthly or yearly cost. On the other hand, Davinci Resolve is free for a slightly limited version and close to the yearly price of Adobe for the full paid version. What's more is if you buy one of Blackmagic's cinema cameras, then you get the paid version of Davinci Resolve thrown in. Clunky workflow. So say you were editing inside of Premiere Pro and you wanted to do some motion graphics, for instance. You can highlight selected clips, right click and replace with After Effects composition. This will then bring up a brand new After Effects project with your selected clips. If you look back at your Premiere Pro timeline, you'll see that this is now linked to your After Effects composition. So any changes that you make in After Effects will appear over in Premiere Pro. Which sounds amazing and nice and convenient for Adobe to think of this. Well, it would be if it bloody worked. If I make a change in the After Effects composition that, you know, has some decent bulk to it, like in a real world situation, it takes about 1,000 years for Premiere Pro to catch up. And by that point, you're so old and broke because, you know, you've spent all your money on the Adobe subscription service. You've got no friends because they've all moved over to Davinci Resolve. Your sex life is non-existent because it's just all Adobe's fault. And their logo looks stupid. Point 3, bugs. Now, I've been lucky enough to not have any major issues when editing in Premiere Pro on a Mac, but I've certainly heard of some horror stories, especially when dealing with client work. Issues preventing you from exporting a Premiere Pro project or rendering out a composition in After Effects. The theory on why this is that Adobe are simply building on top of old code, instead of building something from the ground up. There's been a couple of times where I've had to use a workaround to export a client project, and for a professional grade piece of editing software, that simply isn't good enough. So now I've just about finished trash talking Adobe. Let's talk about what Davinci Resolve has to offer in terms of features and performance. Nodes. Now, this is something that could go in the cons box if you're a beginner to working with nodes. I have to say, if I wasn't an absolute geek when it comes to Blender, the 3D animation software, that by the way is open source, then I wouldn't have had a clue what I was doing in terms of the nodes inside of Davinci Resolve, and the learning curve would have been way more steep than it actually was. They are a lot more difficult to wrap your head around when you're starting out, but they do make a lot of sense workflow-wise. All-in-one workflow. Davinci Resolve is an all-in-one workflow, presented going from left to right at the bottom of your screen. It's like having Premiere Pro, Audition and After Effects all in one place, so you're not bouncing between softwares or waiting 1,000 years like previously mentioned. Professional Colour Suite. The most attractive thing about Davinci Resolve is the colour suite, and it makes Lumetri colour inside of Premiere Pro just seem super weak. Does that even make any sense? Super weak? Really weak. Makes it look really weak. It's what Hollywood and TV shows use to grade their footage, so it's even got the sort of unofficial social stamp of approval within the industry. But what about Photoshop, I hear you cry? In terms of a good Photoshop alternative, there is a software called GIMP. No, not that GIMP, this GIMP. It certainly rivals Photoshop in the features that I like to use, and it continues to get better and better. There are some nice things in Davinci Resolve that make the transition slightly easier. With the keyboard shortcuts, you can kind of do a bit of a, can you do what my ex did? And change the shortcuts to mimic another software like Premiere Pro, Final Cut, or whatever it is that you're transitioning from. So there we are. We'll see in the coming weeks if I have a bit of a rebound and I end up just going back to Premiere Pro, After Effects, Audition, etc. But I am going to give Davinci Resolve a genuine chance here. Hello everybody, how's it going? If you like this video, then don't forget to give it a like. It really does help to beat the YouTube algorithm. If you're new to the channel, then make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay updated with all of the content being released on this channel. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.